Okay, let's unpack this. We're looking at some really fascinating sources today, all centered on AlphaFold.
Right, DeepMind's tool, the one that predicts protein structures from amino acid sequences.
Exactly. A huge leap in biology, everyone agrees. But these sources, they suggest looking at it, well, differently.
Through this lens of motion theory.
Yeah. The idea that AlphaFold's success might align with this theory. So our deep dive today is into that reinterpretation. Why does AlphaFold work? Maybe it's not just chemical forces.
That's a good question. Because predicting protein structure, that was one of biology's grand challenges for, decades.
Absolutely. And proteins are vital, right? They do almost everything in the cell, but their function totally depends on that specific 3D shape.
Totally. And the standard story, the textbook explanation, is how that linear chain folds up.
It's all about the physics and chemistry, usually. How bits of the chain avoid water hydrophobic forces.
Right, or how charged parts attract or repel electrostatics.
And those tiny little van der Waals forces between atoms, the idea is it just sort of settles into the lowest energy configuration based on all that.
Exactly. But here's the interesting part from these sources. AlphaFold. It's incredibly good, but it doesn't actually simulate all those forces directly, not in a step-by-step physics way.
Oh, right. It uses deep learning, doesn't it? Trained on tons of known protein structures.
Precisely. It learns the patterns. It figures out what kinds of amino acid arrangements tend to form stable structures based on all that data.
So it's like it learned to recognize a properly folded protein from its sequence rather than, say, calculating the forces needed to fold it.
That's a great way to put it. It identifies statistical regularities, and this is where the motion theory angle comes in. It offers a different, maybe complementary perspective.
Okay, so what's the motion theory view then?
Well, instead of seeing the amino acid sequence as just a static string waiting for forces to act on it, you see it as inherently dynamic from the start. Like it has potential rhythmic loops or patterns of motion built in, almost like a complex vibrating string,
So each sequence has its own kind of internal rhythm, its own way of potentially vibrating.
Kind of, yeah. And folding in this picture isn't just about finding the lowest energy state because of forces. It's framed as the resolution of those initial dynamic rhythms.
Resolution, like settling down.
Exactly. Think of maybe complex vibrations settling into a stable resonant frequency, or interacting pendulums finding a synchronized swing. The final protein shape is basically the physical form of that resolved synchronized motion.
Wow, okay. That is a different way to think about it. So how does AlphaFold's deep learning fit into that idea, the motion idea?
Well, the argument from these sources is that AlphaFold's deep learning, by finding those statistically stable structures in the data, is essentially recognizing these stable points of motion, these rhythmic attractors. The algorithm learns the patterns that correspond to the shapes where those inherent dynamics have settled down and synchronized.
So it's not calculating the forces that cause the settling, but it's super good at spotting what the settled state looks like structurally.
You got it. It's identifying the stable outcome without explicitly simulating the dynamic journey, step by step.
It's like finding the signature of stability bypassing the detailed process. Okay, I see the connection.
Yeah, and this raises the question. Why does reframing it this way matter? It's probably not saying the force-based view is wrong.
Right, it feels more like adding another layer.
Exactly. A potentially powerful complementary layer. Thinking about folding as motion resolution might give us new conceptual tools.
Instead of just forces did it, it's more like the inherent dynamics of the sequence naturally settle into this stable motion pattern, which results in this shape.
Precisely. And looking at biological form this way, through structured motion, could open up new insights. The practical implications mentioned in the sources are pretty interesting too.
Like what practical difference could thinking about motion resolution make?
Well, potentially a better handle on misfolding diseases, like Alzheimer's or Parkinson's. Instead of just saying forces went wrong, maybe we can analyze why the motion patterns fail to resolve correctly, or why they settle into harmful aggregated states.
Ah, okay. A different diagnostic angle.
Could be. And maybe for synthetic biology too. Designing new proteins, not just by calculating forces, but by designing sequences whose dynamics are likely to resolve into the shape you want.
Designing the rhythm to get the structure?
Sort of, yeah. And maybe even broader insights into how things move and interact inside the incredibly dynamic environment of a cell.
Okay, so wrapping this up. The core idea from these sources is AlphaFold works incredibly well. Maybe because biological form itself arises from structured motion settling down. And AlphaFold's deep learning is exceptionally good at recognizing those stable endpoints, those rhythmic attractors.
Exactly. It hints that maybe this principal structured motion resolving into stable states might be fundamental to lots of other biological processes too, not just protein folding.
So, a final thought for you listening, where else in biology might this apply? Think about complex processes moving things around the cell, DNA coiling and uncoiling, maybe even signals propagating. Could viewing them through the lens of dynamics and rhythmic resolution give us completely new insights? Something to think about.